Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of MGR Unplugged. Do I even know the name of
you stuttering on the title?
I was going to say antitrust, because that's the main topic. Anyways, MGR Unplugged. That's the name of the podcast. However, today we're going to focus mostly on the congressional hearing yesterday with the 4 CEOs of the major tech companies. Those were actually the GAFA companies that we talked about for the European tax. Google, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook. So anyways, yesterday the 4 CEOs were testifying before Congress.
You know, there's... Oh, never mind.
What?
Well, if you spell FANG, but take out the N.
Oh. But
so I was like, is it the FANG companies? I was like, no, but Netflix isn't there. And then I thought, so it's F-A... Oh, I shouldn't say that.
Well, now they had 2 A's because it became like Apple, Alphabet.
No, it's Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Apple,
Amazon,
Google.
and then Google. Yeah. So now if you consider Google Alphabet, then it's fat. Anyways,
I heard they're going back on that. They're getting rid of Alphabet. They're just going back to Google.
Yeah, that was kind of
because they said it's too confusing.
Start. So anyway, we're still in the intro here, by the way. So
Which, by the way, it's very stupid. I never understood the Alphabet thing. I was like, you can just be Google. Like, anyways.
They never even owned the domain, but so we're gonna discuss mostly a little bit of a breakdown for people that didn't listen to it, what it was discussed and all that stuff, and then we'll have a little bit of a late conversation about basketball. David is so excited it starts today. Finally, he thought it was last week. He was so disappointed. So it's today. Today, basketball season officially resumes. I wouldn't say starts, but resumes, and in the bubble in Orlando, and see how that goes. So we're ready. So before we start, let's just roll the music.
None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
All right, welcome back. David, what do you want to start with, basketball or antitrust hearing? All right, so yesterday the 4 CEOs were testifying before Congress. Actually, it wasn't right there. They were remotely testifying because of the pandemic. So that was kind of a little strange. But they were all testifying, and it was an anti-monopoly or antitrust hearing against or for Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Apple, basically. And that's one of the reasons why some people were asking, well, how come Twitter is not there, or Microsoft, or other major tech companies? But this was just an antitrust, basically trying to dissect whether these companies should be broken up into, because they've become a huge monopoly in their respective fields. So that was the gist of the hearing, and to my surprise, actually, they were normally when you have these hearings, you realize that congressmen or women or members of the committee, the judicial committee in this case, are not really prepared for these kind of technical questions, and the CEOs just kind of like giving a wraparound. But actually, I did listen to, it was about 5 hours. I didn't listen, obviously, to or watch the 5 hours, but I did see a lot of the highlights. And I was surprised. I mean, they were asking very, very good questions this time. They were very well prepared for the questions, as far as the congressional members that were part of the committee. They asked very good questions. They put the CEOs on the spot. And if anything, I would say this time, the CEOs themselves didn't look to be so well prepared. Like their answers were either very vague, or they didn't know, but there's one thing when you say I don't know, or you kind of give this wraparound and answer politician question, but in this case they were actually kind of caught on the spot a little bit and made a little nervous, which kind of makes you feel like these CEOs should be ready for all kinds of tough questions, but they weren't. So we'll get more into those details, but what was your first impression, David, from what you saw?
I thought that Zuck did not do well. You can just tell that they're all putting on an act, all the CEOs, because you hear stories, you hear things about behind closed doors, how they really are. you know, and even the Congress people were like reading internal emails that were leaked and all of that. And it's like, you know, Zuckerberg saying like, we need to murder the competition, and, you know, and it's like, yeah, but that's how they really are. And then, you know, they put on the suit and tie and sit there and say, well, no, Congressman, because it's like, that's not the real Zuckerberg. That's not the real Bezos. These guys are killers. That's why they're there.
But you mentioned one thing about the emails, which is something that is pretty amazing to me. Why are these guys having those conversations and they put everything in writing where there's a paper trail of them saying those specific things that were taken up against them years later? I mean, they have this.
A lot of them were old. Like some of the emails were like 2011, 2012.
It doesn't matter. They should know enough to have. I mean, they have these emails that says confidential. Oh, we're gonna murder. Instagram is killing us. We're gonna annihilate them and blah blah and all that stuff. And they have these internal memos that are public. I mean, congressmen, they had that as proof. So they can't deny something that they were inter-office memos or emails where they were saying that. So why? Or even text messages or whatever, why having that kind of exchange with their own high-level people with that paper trail that could be coming against them? I mean, legally, it's just, I mean, they were basically putting themselves on the spot, because if they're trying to say, oh, no, we respect the competition, this or that. No, you don't. You just basically said you're threatening them. So either you join us or we're going to kill you. I mean, financially. So...
Yeah, you know... See, I think a lot of people...
And this is Zuckerberg, who actually covers his camera and his USB and all that for security and all that.
You know, I think there's a lot of people don't understand what makes something an antitrust case. Just because you're successful and you're a big company does not mean that you're anti-competitive. That's a very different thing. So just because Facebook is now big and successful... doesn't, and I'll give my opinion of which ones I think actually should probably be broken up or not. But just because a company is big and successful doesn't mean that they're a monopoly, right? That just means that they were big and successful. There's nothing wrong with being the best in your industry and being the dominant player.
I completely agree with that.
And there were times where I kind of just wish Zuckerberg or any of these guys would have basically just said, yeah, Congressman, my job is to win, and we won. Okay, and if you don't think our competitors were saying the same thing about us, you're out of your mind. Okay, just like in the same way that, by the way, these I would love, my comeback to any of these people would be like, hey, Senator, you've held your seat for 6 terms in a row now. Couldn't someone argue that you're anti-competitive? Do you have a monopoly? Well, no, you have plenty of people who run against you every time, right? But you win. Your job is to win. And guess what? We won. That's what we do. And if we hadn't won, we would never have won had we not been killers. Because if you want to build $1 trillion company, you need to be a killer.
And I agree with that. I mean, obviously, all of a sudden, it looks like being competitive and basically beating your competition is a bad thing.
It's like saying Michael Jordan had a monopoly on championships. No, he was just fucking better than everybody.
Right. But it's not so much, but if Michael Jordan, the problem with this monopoly and antitrust hearing is that if Michael Jordan, all of a sudden, not only was he the best player of his era, or maybe arguably the best player ever, but if he also owned the referee association and the NBA and the team, and then basically he owns everything, and then, by the way, he is also the best player. So I think that the problem is when you dissect the different situations with the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons, and all that, is that they started being very aggressive and with very good CEOs, and not just in the past. I mean, Bezos has been with Amazon since the beginning, but obviously Sundar Pichai, he's been there after Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and Tim Cook, the same thing. But they grew the company to a point where they control everything. They become the judge, the jury, and the executors, and that is the problem that they have, because in the case of Amazon, they started their own company selling books on DVDs and CDs, and now they started third-party sellers and all that stuff. And for example, Google is the same thing. One of the accusations is that they started in the search engine business and they became better. I mean, when they started, they were like, that was 15, 20 years ago.
So to me, of the 4 companies that were there, The two that I think there is no case for, and I'll tell you why, are Apple and Amazon. I think that there is a case for Google and Facebook, but for Apple and Amazon, I don't think there's a case. Apple is the most obvious one. Apple doesn't have a monopoly on anything. They sell a shit ton of iPhones, but there's plenty of other phone competitors out there. And in fact, on a revenue basis, Apple is the best. But on a pure unit sold, Apple is not the number one unit sold.
Yeah, actually don't. I agree. I mean, I don't know why Apple was
there. The whole thing is that they basically charge high fees to the App Store, and that they're pretty controlling of what apps get approved. But it's their closed ecosystem. If you want to be on an open ecosystem, go to Android.
Well, it was a little bit of also not just the App Store for the apps, but also the fact that they have their own Apple TV and everything, and they have the fees also, whether you have Amazon Prime, and there was a conflict when they were accepting Amazon Prime or not, and then you have Netflix and how much of they have Showtime, and then you subscribe to Showtime through Apple TV, then they have a cut of that, and they kind of were controlling the content a little bit.
Platform.
Right, and I think I agree. I think in Apple's case, it's a big company, it's a very American.
Ultimately, and by the way, like for Apple, the money they make from all that services and shit, it's icing on the cake. The far cases, majority of their money is hardware.
Right.
Okay, so they compete on hardware, which is the most difficult thing.
One of the complaints they had yesterday was that Apple basically was, when they created their own parental control apps and everything, and within Apple, they
yeah, I saw that, but that was stupid.
They competed with the competitive apps that also did those parental control things.
Apple doesn't make money from
well, that was the
phone.
That was the kind of argument from Tim Cook, that he says, well, by the way, yeah, we create our own thing because it's a platform, and we feel like we need to create some kind of parental control thing within our own ecosystem, not just relying on third-party apps. He says, but let me remind you, he said, that we make no money from those applications that we
Why
create.
Isn't anyone saying, well, Apple made a weather app, and there's a million other weather apps, and it's anti-competitive? It's like, okay, yeah, sure. But, it's like basically Apple says, all right, if we have something that we think probably more than half of our users will use, we should probably have that default on the phone. It's probably their rough assessment.
And that happens. I mean, they have apps for everything. They have apps to follow the stock market. They have the news. They have this.
But guess what?
But people have choices. They can choose.
Like the Apple Stocks app sucks. I never use the Apple Stocks app.
Same thing. I don't even like their weather app. I have like tons of other third-party apps that are much more accurate or detailed and everything for weather in different places. So I agree. I mean, they have their own platform, and you can submit something that is better. They don't boost yours versus the other one. They have their own rankings in their apps and everything. So I think in this case, Apple is definitely not.
I think there's no case against Apple. Next up would be Amazon. That's the one I don't think there's a case for. Here's why. A lot of people focus on, and by the way, I'm saying this as someone who thinks that Amazon very often is terribly shitty to sellers. But I don't think that they're a monopoly, because Amazon only makes up in the United States. This year it'll be more, but in 2019 they only made up about 7% of the U.S. commerce. Okay, Walmart is much bigger than Amazon still. Okay, it's just in e-com they're much larger. So, and this year maybe Apple will make up a little, or I'm sorry, Amazon will make up a little over 10%, but that's not enough to say monopoly. People act like Amazon is like owning the economy. They're not. And I think that Amazon has a lot of its own disadvantages too. And we're seeing that more and more, where you're having people successfully compete with Amazon. I think Shopify is doing a great job of providing an alternative to Amazon. Same with lots of other e-commerce companies. Walmart is getting in the game too. I just think that Facebook is getting in the game too.
Well, I think Amazon doesn't have that big competition, because the other competitors that they had before,
because Amazon was first.
Underestimated them. No, I mean,
Amazon was first.
First in the e-commerce arena, correct?
Yes, so Amazon is the first, and they've won so far. But now e-commerce isn't a secret anymore. Everybody is in on it.
Right.
Okay, and I think that Amazon actually has some significant weaknesses that I've discussed in this podcast before. The biggest being that the way people make purchasing decisions today is very much in a social commerce world, and Amazon has very little social commerce plays. They have a platform, or if you want to call it a platform, a platform for buying and selling goods, but they don't have anything to drive demand. And demand generation is incredibly important. That's what Facebook has and Google has. I think the ones that there is certainly a case for antitrust is Facebook and Google. But I think Apple and Amazon are not. Apple, they have plenty of competitors. They just make really awesome products that a lot of people like.
And to be honest, even Apple, I mean, Amazon it's big in the US, but it's not that big everywhere else in the world.
Like Apple in the United States is the biggest. In Europe, it's pretty big too. But like in Asia, it's not that big. In fact, their biggest disappointment has been their lack of growth in Asia.
Even in Europe, Apple is not the dominant device. Actually, everybody has more. There are many more Android-based phones than Apple phones, just because of they're cheaper.
Apple is in a commodified market. Smartphones are totally commodified now.
Commodified or commoditized?
Both. You get the point. Basically, most smartphones are pretty much the same. It's just what brand and operating system you want to use. Apple has a monopoly on iOS, but listen, software is copyable. You know, Apple copies Android all the time. Android copies Apple all the time. I mean, it's commonplace. So Apple definitely doesn't have a monopoly. Amazon is a huge company and they're very successful, but they don't have a monopoly. And actually, I think they have some very significant weaknesses that will be exposed if they don't address them in the coming 5 to 10 years.
I think sooner. I mean, I think the famous thing that they're a one-trick pony and they haven't innovated anything since... I wouldn't say since Steve Jobs.
Oh, no, I'm talking about Amazon.
Oh, you're talking Amazon now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were.
Apple too. I mean, Apple's supposedly coming with Apple needs AR. That's their savior. They're supposedly going to come with AR glasses next year. If they do, because the iPhone is going down in sales because basically phones last longer. Phones are good. You know, you don't need a new iPhone every time because it's not that different from the last one. So iPhone sales are going down. Mac sales are obviously going down. Overall PC sales are going down. So the iPad...
I mean, you can only come up with so many versions. You know, I mean, they better camera.
They made a great phone, but guess what? The iPhone's been around for 13 years now, 2007, right? So yeah, they need a new product. So AR could be their next iPhone. We'll see if it is. We'll see what they come with. But anyways, Apple's definitely not a monopoly. And Amazon is actually, believe it or not, as big as they are, I think Amazon is way too small to be considered a monopoly too.
Well, if anything, I would think Amazon, if they were to split something, it would be more, which they didn't even mention yesterday. But I would say, okay, you also control this cloud space. And we'll say, okay, we'll separate your Amazon Web Services
from Amazon Web Services is not a monopoly either,
right?
Because you have Azure, you have Google Cloud.
No, you have Google Cloud, you have Amazon. I mean, Microsoft.
Azure,
right.
And they have plenty of competition. Now, are they still number one again because they were first? Yes, they're still the largest because they were first, and they have great products. But there's plenty of competition.
Right.
There's plenty of competition from Google and Microsoft, but also from a lot of smaller companies too. So. They don't really. Amazon doesn't really have monopolies anywhere. They're just the largest in many markets.
Well, but the biggest complaint was, and you know this very well because you deal with that stuff all the time, is accusing or basically, I mean, there's actually proof that Amazon basically mines data from their own sellers to boost their own products, their own private label products.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
And so sellers go there with their product that they work so hard to sell, and then they use Amazon as a marketplace. And then Amazon says, oh, this thing is selling very well. We need to basically control it, copy it, knock it off, and then sell it under the Amazon brand. And then they hurt their own sellers.
Yes. But, and by the way, I'm being incredibly objective here, okay? As someone who, you know, we work with sellers all the time, we've had sellers who Amazon has their own Amazon basic versions of their same exact products. But I have to be objective here. If you make that illegal for Amazon to do, then you have to make it illegal for every fucking retailer in America that does it. Every retailer has their own, you know, like here we have like lots of Kroger stores. Guess what? Half the products in there are Kroger brand. Walmart has their own brand. Costco famously has Kirkland's, right? Like every retailer does this. Every retailer does this. So if you make it illegal for Amazon, then you're going to have to make it illegal for all of them. It sets a precedent. And I don't think you should do that.
But the question, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, I totally understand your point, but when Walmart is putting, or Kroger or whatever, are putting their own branded products next to the brand name product, like they put something next to their, like Windex, and they have their own brand or something, they're not using the customer data. The customer goes to
What do you mean?
Well, no, I'm talking about the retail store. You go there.
Oh, retailers are... People talk about Amazon being bad with data. Retailers don't give a fuck. Retailers don't give companies any data at all. They own all the data. They know all the foot traffic data.
I understand.
Everything.
But if I walk...
They don't share anything.
Well, I understand. But my point is, if I go to a Fry's supermarket or whatever, Walmart, and I see a whole shelf full of cleaning products, for example, or medicines or whatever, and I look at all the brands, and I say, okay, this brand is a window cleaner and it costs $5.95. This one is the Walmart brand and it costs $3.95. I have the choice. I mean, I don't have any data that is serving me this product over the other one or boosting it or whatever.
Well, you do, because they're taking shelf space from
they're taking shelf space there,
but
they're all there at the same view range, versus if I go to Amazon and I'm searching whatever, the Amazon selected product or Amazon's choice or whatever comes usually first.
But Amazon's
versus
choice
the other
is different.
one.
Amazon's choice can be any product.
Well, I understand, but you have a little. You are served a search result versus you go there and you have all the products, and then you decide based on comparing ingredients and formulas and everything which one you prefer and price, obviously. So I see the point of Amazon saying, okay, well, this product that has the search terms and all that stuff, and these guys are doing very well, we're going to knock it off and then use that customer data to place this product on top of everything. And so if they want to find the other product, they're going to have to scroll down and find it. But we're going to place ours first. So I mean, those things are a little tricky, and we know that exist. I'm not so much into copying. The whole e-commerce or the whole world these days works about copying everything.
Yeah, but if you have a product that... See, that's the other thing, though, that companies who can just have products ripped off like that aren't good companies. You need to have... If you have a product that's easily copyable and then Amazon can just come in and cut your price and beat you, then you don't have a good company.
Well, yes.
That's why brand matters.
I understand.
That's why customer service and experience matters.
But you're talking about the person that is shopping for a brand versus the person that is shopping for a product. If you want a brand, then there's no competition. You want something Nike, I don't care what Adidas is doing.
Build a brand.
Yes, but there's other companies and other products that are not necessarily...
Listen, the truth is...
I mean, when Amazon was competing with diapers.com, and that was one of the things that they said, and soap.com and all these other things. Okay. And then diapers.com was selling, they ended up just buying them out.
The truth is, this is the truth. The far majority of Amazon sellers are not product developers or innovators. They go to the same suppliers that other people sell from and slap their brand on it and sell the same product. If you go on Amazon for a lot of things, you'll notice a lot of the products look similar because they're the fucking same. Okay, I'm telling you this as someone on the inside who knows. A lot of these brands use the same exact supplier, the same product. They just put their label on it. Okay, and so then if Amazon does the same thing, goes to the same supplier, sells the same product, is there anything wrong with that? Well, you should probably differentiate yourself if you don't want that to happen to you. If you just sell the same product as everybody else,
well, I agree.
You can't expect not
to me the main problem with the sellers, the third-party sellers, is that they go into Amazon Marketplace, which at the end of the day is somebody else's marketplace.
Yeah, on top of course.
Right. And then they go there and they get used to having all these customers, and then that marketplace, whether it's a physical... It's like you go to a farmer's market and all of a sudden they say, sorry, we're not going to accept your stand anymore. And it's like, oh, shoot, I was used to coming here every weekend and I was making $1,000 every day or whatever. And it's like, well, sell on your own store. We're just giving you the space and then we're shutting down the market, or we're not accepting these products or whatever, So that's bad on the sellers to rely only on Amazon or put Amazon as their main revenue source, because they know they have zero control over what Amazon is doing. But one thing, like if I'm a book writer or something and I'm used to writing maybe a book a month, kids stories, children books, whatever, and I write the books and they're doing pretty well and I have my following and all that stuff, and then I sell through Amazon's bookstore. And then Amazon says, well, these guys are selling very well, so we're going to start creating our own children's books, and we're going to knock these guys off, and then we'll start selling our own books because they're not going to find those books anymore. They're going to find ours, which is a true story. That was a family, basically, that were highlighted yesterday. And all of a sudden, their books that were selling so well sold nothing. Because if I'm looking for a children's book and I don't see that book listed, I'm going to buy something that is listed, which is basically one that is making more money for Amazon because it's their own book. So then they cut me off. So that's bad on Amazon for doing that, as Bezos recognized, and he said that he wasn't aware and blah, blah, blah. But it's also bad on the seller to say, hey, my only way to sell the books is through Amazon. Okay, well, open your own bookstore, create your own website, create your own store. So if people really like you, they're going to do a search, find you, and then they just buy from you direct. So it's something that you cannot just put the blame on the business trying to, like Amazon or whatever. You need to also be a business person yourself and say, I'm using Amazon as a channel, but it's not going to be my only channel. If that spoke of my wheel breaks, I still have 10 others that are going to sustain the wheel so it keeps rolling, So that's my argument to that. But yeah, I agree as far as Amazon not being a monopoly. I think it's a good business.
I think they were the first mover in a huge space, and they won. Why did they win? Because Amazon, for the consumer, is a phenomenal product. They give you the best prices. They give you free 1 or 2 days shipping. I mean, it's a great, great product. Why do you think so many people use it? It's just for sellers.
Well, I mean, Amazon has been the highlight of this pandemic. If it weren't for Amazon...
Yeah. If it weren't for... if the problem is that sellers complain that Amazon... I think Amazon should treat sellers better, and that it's going to hurt them in the future that they've treated sellers so bad, because I think new platforms are going to pop up that will treat sellers better. But Amazon doesn't have a monopoly. There's plenty of ways to compete with Amazon. Like your fruit stand example. Okay, well, if I'm Farmer Joe and I sell oranges at the fruit market, okay, and I sell them at whatever price, and then another guy comes in and is able to maybe buy in larger quantities, whatever, and he's able to cut me by 25%, and then I start losing business because of that, well, that's business. That's competition.
Yeah, I agree.
Consumer benefits, because now the consumer gets cheaper oranges. Mm-hmm. So if Amazon is giving people, like I said, you can't be competed with. If you're actually doing real product innovation and brand innovation, then it's very hard to compete with you. Amazon, if you notice, doesn't compete with Nike, okay? They go and do the things that are super generic that everybody has the same suppliers for, okay? If you're selling,
I agree.
A generic vitamin, and Amazon now has their vitamin line.
When it comes to products, the consumer is in charge, basically. I mean, it's
ultimately that competition is good for the consumer.
Right. The consumer is in charge, because when Amazon started putting away or putting out of business a lot of big box retailers, specifically in the electronics side, like all these Circuit Cities and Ultimate Electronics, I mean, stores that we know even Best Buy was in danger, and then they kind of reshaped their own way of doing business to compete with Amazon, and they're doing much better now. Actually, they're doing very well now. So, but when Amazon started putting all those guys out of business, it's because they provided a marketplace so people can sell those products and then be more competitive. And then everybody was saying, okay, well, the only advantage that Amazon had, which is now going away, is that people were saying, okay, they're not paying sales taxes. And that's when the states were jumping in saying, hey, everybody's just going to my store, be Best Buy, and then comparing prices, go to the app, and they say, oh, it's the same price on Amazon, but I have free shipping and I save on taxes.
The biggest advantage that Amazon has right now is their fulfillment. But that's not by accident. That's because Amazon has invested billions and billions of dollars into their fulfillment infrastructure. So
everything, fulfillment and the last mile shipping and the last mile delivery, which is part of the fulfillment, everything. I mean, they are now creating their own fleet.
But there's nothing wrong with that. That's great for the consumer.
Right.
Is anybody complaining that they get their stuff in one day for free?
Well, the only thing you have to think about is that what are the rest of the stores doing now? What is the Walmart doing? What is even Shopify? What is Best Buy? All these stores. They're trying to copy what Amazon has been successful on. What did Walmart just come up with? Their own Prime format. We just discussed that 2 weeks ago. What is Walmart doing again? They have their own 1 day shipping for some products and 2 day shipping for some of the things. They're copying all the features that are successful. So if Walmart is copying, what's wrong with Amazon copying or creating? They're setting the trend and being like annihilating the competition, basically, because they have a better seamless product to, from product or from seller to consumer process where everything is so one click away, and we're spoiled. And everybody else that was saying, oh yeah, you want 2-day shipping, yeah, well, it's going to take us 3 days to even process your order, and then maybe you get the 2-day shipping, maybe not, we don't know the tracking. I mean, that's just totally obstacles. The consumers today want things right away, and they set the bar so high. Whether it's at their own cost or not is another story. That's up to them.
The thing that
but they
people
set the
don't
bar
understand,
so high that the other businesses could not just basically
the
compete
thing that
with
people
them.
don't understand is that Amazon's biggest competitor is not other e-commerce companies. Amazon's biggest competitor is retail. And they need to do everything they can to compete with retail. Because at the end of the day, retail still dominates consumer spending in the United States by far. This year, because of the pandemic, we've had a freak explosion in e-commerce. But even still, right? Basically, we went from 15% of consumer spending being online to now about 25%. And that was a massive explosion. But it's still only 25%.
Right.
The biggest competitor is not some e-commerce website. It's retail. And they need to do everything they can to compete with retail. And so the nice thing about retail is, guess what? You go to the store, you buy it, you take it home that day. So why do you think they are investing so much in fulfillment? Because they want to provide that same experience, but buy it online.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Agreed. And to that end,
And
I
they
think
raised, the thing that Amazon has done that's good is they've raised the bar for everybody in e-commerce, because now consumer expectations are very high.
Right.
And so everybody has to meet those.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's why the other big retailers are now trying to copy
Right.
Amazon, because they ignored Amazon's success when they started. When they were saying, oh, well, these guys are not going to be competing with us. People like to come to a store. Well, guess what? They don't. And now they're trying to do everything that Amazon is doing just to be competitive. So and to that end, in my opinion, from all the 4 CEOs that were testifying yesterday, I think Jeff Bezos is the one who did a better job explaining what he could explain, recognizing what he could not explain, and saying, okay, well, I think this may be happening, even though it's against our policies, but we're definitely looking into that. I think he was more prepared and giving more straight answers than the other 3.
Okay, let's talk about Facebook and Google.
So yeah, let's move on to the more conflicting ones, which is Facebook and Google. So go ahead with Facebook if you want to.
Yeah, so these are the 2 that I think there's a real case for monopoly.
By the way, before you get there, Facebook, Zuckerberg, to me, was the worst performer by far. I mean, he comes across... he was lying flat out about all things.
He's not a great speaker, man.
He's not a great speaker. That's number one. He's not a great speaker even in this kind of trial situations. Even though he wasn't physically there, he was in his office or something. By the way, all the 4 CEOs had to swear before the hearing that they were not being fed, because they were not present there. They had to swear that they were not being fed answers by their staff, because they were in their own offices or whatever location with their computers answering the phone. Answering the questions and via video conference, but they had to swear that the answers were just their answers and they were not being fed any answers, which who knows if it's true or not, but they swore that.
Wow, I think for Zuckerberg it was true.
Yeah, with Zuckerberg he has, he was the worst as far as performing. I mean, he was caught lying. He was caught not necessarily sounding truthful, and that's one thing that, in my opinion, he was actually the worst performing CEO, the worst prepared for this particular hearing. But go ahead with.
I think Facebook, it's easy to vilify. It's really easy to vilify Zuckerberg and Facebook. And I'm not saying that they haven't done any wrong and they haven't made a lot of mistakes. But when you kind of ask people, okay, instead of just saying fuck Zuckerberg, what do you want him to do? Right? What do you want Zuckerberg to do? Okay, do you want him to basically just start putting in very strict speech policies? And then basically Facebook is now, this private entity is now speech police? Is that what you want? No. Okay. So then you don't want you want them to be more hands off and just let people have free speech on the platform. Well, no, because then you have fake news and you have hate speech and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what do you want him to do? That's the challenge, right? Because I think Zuckerberg would love nothing more than to be regulated, than for the government to come in and say, these are the rules for social media. Because then he absolves himself of responsibility. Right now, he is fully responsible for everything that happens on his platform because we don't have any rules at the government level for the platforms. And so he takes the heat no matter what. He takes the heat if he lets people have total free speech, or the opposite, if he's doing too much censorship, he takes all the heat. There's no winning, basically. And I think he wants nothing more than to be regulated because he doesn't know what to do. I mean, what should Facebook do? Should they start being speech police, or should they? Because a lot of the questions was asking him about very specific instances of censorship and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying that there is not censorship at these companies. There obviously is on a lot of different levels. But I think Facebook is too big, basically. They are too big to the point where they have too much power because Zuckerberg, this is the problem. Zuckerberg has terrible PR. Zuckerberg is one of the most ruthless, badass founders we've had in the last 20, 30 years. And there's a reason why Facebook is where it is. And you can see in the emails that they brought up exactly how they got where they were.
In the context, if we separate the censorship or free speech and all that, which is another topic, but in the context of antitrust, the fact that Facebook policy has always been like copying or cloning or knocking off competitors' features to their advantage, or basically threatening them, if you don't join us, we're gonna basically destroy you. I mean, there were specific instances of emails between or conversations between him and Kevin Systrom from Instagram.
And Spiegel from Snapchat.
Right, exactly. Saying basically that they were feeling threatened, saying, if you don't sell to us, we're going to destroy you.
Like, here's the thing, too. I think Zuckerberg is fucking thankful that they didn't buy Snapchat. Because if they owned Snapchat, too, on top of everything else they own, it would just be...
Right, but it was the same conversation with WhatsApp. They were...
Okay, so, yeah, I think that they're too big. And I think they're going to be split up. At some point, I do think so.
Yeah,
at least Facebook and Instagram. I think.
Yeah, if we get into the censorship stuff, then we have all the conversations, including probably the Twitters and everything else. But in this
they're
context,
either going to be split up or heavily regulated and have to follow a very strict rule set. That's what I think. I actually don't think, purely on an anti-competitive basis, I don't think Facebook is anti-competitive. They're highly competitive. I mean, Zuckerberg did his job. Remember, a lot of these things, when you're reading emails from 2012 about Instagram, okay, Instagram wasn't what it is today, and Facebook wasn't what it is today. Okay, in 2012, remember, this is way before the 2016 debacle, way before, I mean, this is way, way, way before any of this happened. This is way before anything involving Russia. This was when nobody took social media seriously, basically, in 2012. So to read those in hindsight, when they're still, they weren't a startup at that point in 2012, but they were still a fast-growing company, and their goal was to, and social media was still a wild west with no settled winners. I don't even think, when Instagram got bought, do you know how many users they had?
No idea.
I think they had, don't quote me on this, but I think they had like 10 million users.
They were growing, but they were strictly a photo filtering app.
I think they had like 10 million users when they got bought. So to put that, I mean, Instagram has over 1 billion users now. So Zuckerberg's job in 2012 was, we need to win social because you have network effects. And if another network gets larger, it's very hard to beat them. So we need to make sure we have the largest network. And he did his job. And now there's many other repercussions of that, and they've made many other mistakes along the way. But to read an email from 2012, man, the world was a very different place in 2012, okay? I don't even think, as smart as Zuckerberg is, he would have ever saw everything that was coming.
And you have to keep in mind, like you said, there's a lot of mistakes.
And by the way, in 2012, people loved Facebook. This was way before.
Right. And not only that, I mean, Facebook tried to do their own copy of Instagram, and then they said, okay, we failed at this thing, we're just going to buy this other company. I don't see anything wrong with that, to be honest. It's more on the operation part, on the conversations and things than actually buying another company. Yeah, Google also tried to jump into the social media arena with Google+. That was a major failure.
You think?
But
they take these emails saying like, oh, we need to kill these guys. That's what every business does. You think any business in the world isn't talking about their competition, saying, "Man, we need to fucking kill these guys. They're gonna try to eat our lunch."
That was my point, saying that why everybody has these conversations behind the scenes, saying, "Hey, we need to kill these guys." I mean, I'm sure if you are Ford, you're complaining about GM doing this, they're killing our truck market, or this and that, or you're Marriott, you're complaining about Hilton's, or you're that kind of conversation will exist in every major competitive arena.
I mean, like
whatever it is, even sports teams or whatever.
Say sports. You think Michael Jordan wasn't on the sidelines saying "fuck these guys"? Did you guys see the documentary?
It's just the fact that they put those things in writing and saying, okay, well, either
but even if they put it in writing, he should have said, "Yeah, guess what? We were competing and we won."
I understand. It's like you're with us or without us. So you're not with us.
Zuckerberg should say, "I'm not going to apologize for winning." Okay, we won and we won.
It's the famous thing. You cannot beat your enemy. Just join them.
Zuckerberg shouldn't apologize for winning. He can apologize for the mistakes they made in 2016 and have made since then. But he should not apologize for winning and being the largest platform. Because if he didn't do it, somebody else would. If he didn't do it, then Systrom would be the Zuckerberg, or Spiegel would be Zuckerberg.
Right.
So someone else would.
I think back to the being split or anything. I think I can see Facebook. I think when they acquired WhatsApp and they started changing some of the features of WhatsApp and all that stuff, I think that was a little kind of tricky because WhatsApp wasn't that known in the US. It's a major use application in Europe and the rest of the world. But
I think
that's one of the things that people didn't like when they acquired all the customer data, and people were using WhatsApp because it had more strict privacy controls and everything. All of a sudden, Facebook acquired them, and I was like, oh wow, now all of a sudden, all my conversations, all my stuff is going to be available just because Facebook has it.
Yeah, but there's also plenty of chat apps that have privacy too, that are not WhatsApp. I mean, Signal is a big one. Signal is the best for privacy. There's other ones. I actually think that Instagram and Facebook are not a monopoly. They have a massive network. They're not going anywhere. But I think that we're going to see plenty of social apps. I mean, we saw TikTok pop up. Nobody saw TikTok coming. And now TikTok is bigger, is going to be bigger than Instagram. Okay? And I think
if it stays in the US.
I think we're going to see more. I think we're going to see more social apps pop up that bring real competition to Facebook and Instagram. But I think there is still an argument to be made that Facebook and Instagram should be separate. Either that or strictly regulated. I
like to think consumers need to also educate themselves and see when they're using these social apps, just realize that they're putting their information out there, Okay. And the amazing thing is that a lot of people don't realize that when you talk about privacy,
but privacy, you know what? I'm going to say this right now. I don't think people care about privacy.
No. Well, exactly. But that's the thing.
Say they care about privacy.
You only hear about privacy concerns when you're talking to high-level tech people or people in the industry or even, people like us. But you go to any main town USA that are using Facebook, all that stuff, you say, are you concerned about your privacy? And they look at you like, what are you talking about?
People
they don't understand.
TikTok, where it's literally the CCP stealing your data. There were plenty of people saying, I saw it, saying, I don't care.
Yeah.
The U.S. government steals my data. I don't care if the Chinese do it too. What does it bother me?
Or I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to,
I don't think people care about privacy. I think that people at tech companies care about privacy. I don't think average people care about privacy.
Right. And then they say, anyways, let's
so
jump to
Google. I think the biggest one that there is 100% an antitrust argument for is Google, because their argument against it is that you're just one click away from another search engine. Right, that's their whole thing. You just like you type in google.com, you could type in any other search engine, and they're just one click away. Mm-hmm. That's not true, because what does every website in the world optimize for? We
search.
do it too.
Yeah,
Google search, not just any search.
Because they dominate 2/3 of the market.
Yes, more, but in the U.S. more. In the U.S. it's 90-something%.
Wow. As far as search.
Yeah, as far as search. Yeah. But then Google also owns Chrome. They own Gmail.
Right.
They own
That's
YouTube.
The thing.
They own
DoubleClick.
They own DoubleClick. They own all the ads platforms. I mean, Google owns everything. Again, as a business, great job. They fucking did it, okay? But as an antitrust, there's certainly argument to be made. Especially, I think YouTube should be split up.
Well,
I think YouTube should be its own company. In the beginning, YouTube wasn't making money, so they needed to be under Google's wing, and that's how they made it. But at this point, I think that YouTube should be its own company. And I think Google should do it on their own before the government does it. That's what they should do. If Google wants to not be hit with mega antitrust, they should split YouTube into its own thing.
Yeah, that will be a good first step. I mean, the issue with them, specifically in the advertising market, because what they say is that they're feeding the customer the information that is profitable for them. And obviously, again, this is something that is like, okay, yeah, what's wrong with making money? We're a public company. We respond to our shareholders. Therefore, we try to make as much money as possible. So what they ended up doing is buying every single step of the process. So they are in the advertising arena. They are on the buying side and on the selling side. It's almost like I think the congresswoman that was questioning Sundar Pichai, she said, you're like the ad marketplace version of insider trading, that what's going to happen and you buy ahead of time, so these guys have the
right.
information.
So to put it in perspective for people, so if you have your own website, right, and you want to sell and you have display ad spots on your website, it's no different than like if you have like a billboard or something or a
right.
magazine, but you have it on your website. What you can do is you can put those ads for sale in auctions, in ad exchanges, basically,
right.
and then people can bid, and then the highest bidder gets their display ads on your website.
Right.
Well, Google owns the websites, and so like on YouTube, they own the website where those ads are being displayed, and they own the exchange, right? It's like if the NYSE also owned all the companies that were on
right.
the NYSE.
They have the whole display network with AdSense. Then they have they own the exchange itself, which is
right.
DoubleClick. So they can set the bids and the prices and all that stuff basically on their own. So they control the whole aspect of that. And in search, that's just display part, as well as banners and space on publishers. But on the search side, they also are very manipulative of the search results. I mean, they've been modifying the search results to fit their profits as much as possible.
Right.
I mean, you remember
Google search
they used to have all these
significantly worse over
right.
the years.
I mean,
it's getting worse.
You used to have a whole page of organic results, which is the ones that you supposedly earn, and then you have a sidebar.
It's not even just organic versus paid. It's on top of that. It's just that it's so gameable that a lot of the top articles are so worthless,
right?
That they're just trying to sell.
But not only
something.
that, I mean, they were competing with like Yelp is a perfect example. Yelp was getting a lot of traffic from reviews and specifically restaurants and that stuff, and Google say, hey, these guys. A lot of people that go to restaurants are going to Yelp directly and not coming to us because we don't have much information other than this restaurant is here and there. Yelp had everything and reviews and all that stuff. Well, they start stealing all their reviews. So there was a lawsuit and a complaint from Yelp saying, hey, they're taking all our stuff and they're knocking off our rankings from the Google results page. So that was one thing where they were gaming the competition or basically taking advantage of the competition for their own benefit. In addition to that, they I mean, in the travel industry is very well known how you look for something, the whole first half of the page, which is what we call above the fold, is all Google hotel ads basically, or hotel products, which they have their own mini online travel agency results there that you have to pay for. It's called meta search, and then you have all the results there, and then
right. I mean, the
they
argument
can click
against
on
Google is they're the largest search engine, the largest video platform, the largest email provider, the largest web browser. They just own so much shit. Basically.
They own a lot of options.
They own the largest
a lot
ad
of
exchanges.
formats of different customer data. They know your browsing history. They know your communication history through Gmail. They know your viewing history through YouTube. They know everything about you. And therefore, not only that,
and they own Android. Android's open source.
And they own the advertising platform. So that's not enough to say, I know exactly what you want and how you want it and when you want it and how to show it to you and in which format. That's basically the definition of monopoly, because any other company is like, okay, either I play the Google game and hope that I get it, or I have no chance of reaching that potential customer. So that's a very specific case of of a monopoly, if you will, and I think and the CEO Sundar Pichai didn't really do a very good job explaining. He basically just was very straightforward, saying, well, we our data mining, we take care of customer data, and we use customer data for advertising, all that stuff. I mean, basically he would say what they do, but he wasn't explaining what privacy controls they have in place, or what policy they have in place to, if they are really a search engine that allows people to find the best result for what they're looking for, what they're doing to find that kind of neutrality, you know, in addition to selling the advertising space. So
I think Google, if any of them probably should be split up, I think number one is Google, in my opinion. I just think they own too much. And they're lacking. I think their products are just getting worse. They really don't add a lot of, because on top of that, right, those are like the mega tools, but they also own, we didn't really mention much about Android. They also have like the Google Suite,
well, everything,
Google Drive.
Not even that. I mean, Nest. I mean, house products too. I mean, they can tell. I mean, they have security products. They have
Google Maps is the biggest maps.
Right.
I mean, they own a lot. I think the biggest one is that they own YouTube. They own the biggest video platform on top of owning the biggest search engine, on top of owning the biggest email platform. Like, I think Gmail, Google.com, and YouTube are the three biggies that I anticipate something being split up. I think the most likely, and why I think Google should do it on their own without having the government involved preemptively, is I think they should split YouTube.
Okay, well, that's a good question. Do you think, I mean, because everything, they testify for 5 hours, and we've seen this before, and nothing happens really. I mean, yeah, they're put on the spot, and then they move on with their lives. Do you think anything will happen after this?
I think that the world is burning a little bit in a sense, and people are looking for someone to blame. I mean, these companies are very easy to blame.
The European Union is much more strict about this antitrust or anti-monopoly policies. And for example, I mean, they're now considering, I think they actually announced it this morning, that they are Google also purchased Fitbit, which is the health app. Yeah. You know, I actually have a Fitbit wristband. So now the European Union is saying, okay, well, we don't want people's health information that they bought from Fitbit with certain things to now go to Google, and then you match that with all the Google information, and then you have even more content more personal information that you have from each user. So they are actually questioning that. In the US, I don't think there's even a case brought up for that. So these major companies are constantly fighting.
But I don't think that's a monopoly concern, because Fitbit's big and they're successful, but there's plenty of competition in the health watch.
It's not about as far as the monopoly. It's as far as it's the same thing with the personal information. I mean, when you get a Fitbit, you say, okay, I'm trusting this company with my health information. They're gonna know when I exercise, my heart rate, blah blah blah, all that stuff. And now all of a sudden, Google is gonna have that. I didn't want Google to have that information. Fitbit, I trust. Google, I don't. So at what point do you say, okay, well, this has to be a firewall? Same thing happened with WhatsApp and Facebook and so forth. So you trust these companies with certain information that is yours, and then before you know it, let's say that you love Fitbit, but you hate Google, and then before you know it, they're all together.
Here's my counter argument, right? And I think Google probably should be split up in some way. For the consumer, Google is great. Google gives you all of these tools for free, and they're all great, or at least they're all very good, and they give you them all for free. And the reason they're able to give them to you for free is they basically say, we're going to give you all of these tools for free, but we're going to take your data and we're going to sell you ads. So sell it to advertisers we're going to deliver you ads. That's the exchange. Basically, you give up your data privacy, which I don't think most people care about, and you get access to all of this shit for free. Google doesn't charge for anything. YouTube is free, Google is free, Gmail is free, Google Suite, Google Drive, everything is free. Google Maps is free. They just want your data so they can sell ads. And I think most people, honestly, if you said, would you rather keep all your data or pay Google $20 a month for all these services, they say, they can have my data. I don't want to pay $20 a month.
Yeah, but let's say how the tools that you can control to a certain extent what data you provide, and then you can browse things differently.
Yeah,
and
nobody
all that.
looks at that.
I know.
They bury it in the system.
Right.
Like you can go in Chrome, but it's totally buried.
Right. And
Like,
the same
honestly,
people that
if
complain. I mean,
if you ask the average person, okay, if YouTube and Google and Gmail and all these things, they're going to be ad free. We're not going to collect your data, but it's now $25 a month. Do you think anybody's going to do that? Do you think the far majority of people would say, I don't care, take my data. I don't want to pay $25 a month.
Yeah, majority of people will just say, hey, I just like to use Google. They don't even care about that stuff.
There you go.
So, all right. So that was the summary for yesterday's hearing. I personally think that nothing is going to happen in the very near future, or even
very
in the
near.
future.
No, these things don't just happen overnight.
Right.
But if I had to make one guess out of all the companies, I think that at some point YouTube and Google will be split.
At some point. I mean, I think the timing was more critical just because we have elections now in 95 days or something like that. They were saying also, okay, we know what happened 4 years ago with the Russian interference and blah blah and all that stuff on what's going to happen in the next elections. And there's always the proof of campaign contribution and all that, but I think the timing was a little more like because of the elections are coming. After that, I mean, we'll probably hear more in the next couple of months, and then after that, I really don't think anything major will happen. If Google goes and splits YouTube on its own, I think it'll be a good move to say, hey, get off our back for now. We just did this.
Right, I mean, eBay did the same thing with PayPal, right? Like PayPal ended up being worth more than eBay. I think, I'm not saying that YouTube would be worth more than Google, but I think YouTube by itself could easily pull a $150-200 billion valuation probably, and it could be its own mega public company. And I think it should just be its own separate thing.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's switch topics now to wrap it up. So on the lighter note, sports. What do we have? NBA starting this evening, officially restarting the league.
Yep.
Excited?
Yeah.
Well, the Suns are not going to go very far.
Yeah, it's okay. I just want to watch basketball again. I miss basketball.
Who's playing tonight, you said?
The Lakers against somebody. Well, there's a couple games.
Okay.
But the prime time,
I know
by the time this comes out, the game will already have happened.
So I'm completely off of basketball talk. But I remember before the season, of the cancellation of the season, there were 3 or 4 major teams that were in contention that everybody thought they were going to go to the for the championship. And in the Western Conference, it was mostly an LA rivalry between Clippers and Lakers. Then you have the Timberwolves. No, the Bucks.
Timberwolves.
No, the Bucks.
Yeah.
Okay. And who else is in the East that could be? Is Toronto still a factor?
Yeah. Realistic chances of making the finals. Probably Toronto. Maybe the Sixers.
Okay.
I think it's going to be the Bucks. I don't really think anybody. I mean, the Celtics. Maybe. You have the Heat. The Pacers. But
right,
I think the only. To me personally, I think it's the Bucks. In their tier 1 by themselves, and then maybe the Raptors and the Sixers, and maybe the Celtics.
But what I was asking is this still the same now, or after these 3 months that we've been doing basically pandemic stuff, the things have changed? I know some players.
No, I don't. I mean, nothing's changed. If anything, it's just made everybody's healthy now. There's no injuries, right? Everybody had 4 months.
But there's
to
some
recovery.
players. There's some teams that have players that didn't want to go to the.
Everybody's there. There's a few players that didn't go. Avery Bradley for the Lakers didn't go, but for the most part, everybody's there.
Okay, so they're all in the bubble. They're all training, and they're all basically going. Anything, the format is the same. Once the league ends, they're going to have a reduced number of games for the end of the season, and then the playoffs start.
No, it's going to be, there's I think they have, I forget exactly what it is, but there's some type of tiebreaker for the 8-9 seed or something.
Okay.
Or maybe 7 through 10. I forget exactly what they did. But there's going to be some type of play-in games for those few teams that are in that spot.
Okay, like a qualifying, like they do for.
Yeah.
So, what's your prediction for champion this year?
I I don't know. Before it was Lakers. Before the season stopped, I just thought they looked really good, and obviously they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, so that's a tough duo to beat. Probably Lakers or Clippers.
So whoever makes it in the West will win. So it looks like the Bucks will not have a chance.
No, the Bucks have a chance. I'm not saying they don't. If I had to like put my money on it, who do I think? Okay, I think the Lakers are the best top end team because they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But I think the Clippers are just, if you're talking about most well-rounded, flat-out best teams, it's the Clippers. They're the deepest, right? They don't have any weak spots. The Lakers have weak spots. But the Clippers do not have a center. And so when it comes down to Anthony Davis versus whoever the fuck on the Clippers is going to have to guard him, that's going to be a problem. But at the same time, they have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who are going to be very good at guarding LeBron, and they're going to be able to shut him down probably. Not shut him down, but slow him down a lot. And I think it's going to be a big toll on LeBron because he doesn't play a lot of defense normally. It's not that he's not a good defender, but he likes to rest on defense. And when he's got Kawhi and Paul George, there's no rest. He's going to have to defend those guys. And so he's not going to be as productive offensively. So I think whoever wins that series probably wins the championship. But no, the Bucks definitely have a chance. The Bucks are very good. I would just say that they're the number 3.
The fact that it's in a bubble where there's no home court
and then the
advantage, all the
Clippers
stuff.
also are the weakest home team as far as they don't really have a home crowd.
Right.
But that doesn't matter now.
Right.
Basically. And the Lakers have a huge home advantage, right? Playing in Staples with the Lakers crowd is a big deal, and they don't have that anymore.
Right.
And then on top of that, the Lakers lost Avery Bradley and Rajon Rondo, who's been very like out of it basically. And those are two like obviously they're not stars, but when it comes to the playoffs, you need a very well-rounded team, and the Clippers are much deeper than the Lakers are. So, it'll be very fun. It'll be a very fun series. I think my wild card would probably be I have 2 wild cards, and they're literal wild cards. They could either play phenomenal or play like absolute shit and do nothing. And that is the Rockets in the West and the Sixers in the East.
To me, the Rockets are the eternal failure in the playoffs.
The Rockets, when they're on, they're fucking tough to beat.
Yeah, but they're never.
But they also, when they're off, they look terrible.
Yeah.
I also think the Sixers are the same thing. The Sixers, if they can figure it out, as far as pure talent goes, they are the most talented team in the East. So if they can figure it out, they can win the East. But they just have not figured it out. So we'll see. But those are my 2 wild cards. They're either going to be like there's no middle ground. Like they're not like just average. They're either playing like dog shit or they're unstoppable, basically. There's no in between, and I don't know which one we're going to see.
Well, I will be watching.
My other prediction is my local Suns team. Everybody plays 8 games. I hope and I think they have a real chance at winning at least 5 games. I think they look really good. They beat the Raptors. They blew up the Raptors despite the fact...
Yeah, but that was a scrimmage.
No, but it was the final scrimmage game.
Doesn't matter. Still a scrimmage.
No, everybody played. That's the thing. It's just the last game before the real game. So everybody played on both sides. And Devin Booker... We blew out the Raptors, and Devin Booker only had 9 points. Like, the weakest thing is that the Suns are always just getting carried by Devin Booker. And we actually blew out the Raptors without Devin Booker needing to score for us, which is a very good sign. And everybody's healthy. So I'll be watching plenty of Suns games.
All right, well, I'll be watching tonight's Lakers game.
That's the thing is, the Lakers only need to win 1 game, I think.
Okay,
out of 8.
I'll be watching just because I'm curious about the whole bubble environment.
It looks good. It actually looks good.
I've been watching a lot of MLS lately. They have this fake crowd noise.
Yeah, they didn't do that. So for the NBA, they're testing things. They still have the music that you see in normal games, but they don't have crowd noise. I think they're gonna try it.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
It has to be done right. I think the MLS did a good job. Fox did a good job because ESPN didn't have crowd noise and it was a little more strange. But with Fox, the MLS, they had this crowd noise and even like drums and stuff. And to be honest, when you have a tight shot, it almost looks that there's a crowd there. Obviously, when you have a wide shot, you see that there's nobody. But
honestly, the basketball's been good. I mean, I think they did a really good job.
So I will watch the Lakers tonight. After that, I'm not sure exactly what I will watch. But while you watch that, I'll be looking at F1 this weekend. That is also going to Silverstone. They have another triple header weekend, 3 weekends in a row, which is second time. The first time was this season too. So they have 2 at Silverstone, and then if Barcelona stays, because Spain is also back to coronavirus cases increases or whatever. So anyways, for now it's 2 weeks back to back at Silverstone, and then maybe Barcelona in a couple of weeks. So we'll see. All right. So anything else, David? All right. So I think that wraps it up for today. And a reminder that this is brought to you by MGR Agency. We have no sponsors. We don't want to have any sponsors. And for any show notes, go to either MGR Agency or our official podcast website, that is mgrh.com. And everything else, if you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. Give us 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever review method you have. Just help us spread the word, and then other friends can find it as well. But until then, we'll see you next week again. Thanks. Bye-bye.